Islam, Hibu, Haq, Salam, Hurriyatun, Adl, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I, self, law, am master. Elias Bey, your host. I'd like to give to you the parable of a blackbird. Birds are symbolic of the human spirit descending to flesh, partaking of both the nature of air or spirit and of matter, material, able to flit freely between the two. But the blackbird, very particularly because I'm black, is symbolic of the spirit being encased in a shell or a prison or a sepulcher or a tomb of matter. So the blackbird is a symbol of the Moor. The blackbird is a symbol of a Moor, denationalized, but also more anciently symbolic of the ancient humans, who in all of their mythologies and all of their philosophies wrote that man is not of the flesh world, he is not of the matter world, he's actually of the spiritual or the ethereal worlds, the Empyrean world, and yet he has descended to flesh to have a certain experience and to go through a certain alchemical process of regeneration so as to become perfect and ascend into the higher realms, but also retain his flesh body, to perfect, to crystallize his flesh body, to become a conscious immortal, a conscious God walking on the flesh. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word came to earth and dwelt among men, and that Word became the light of the world, like that. And so the blackbird, is symbolic of us as we go on this spiritual quest, partaking of both spirit and matter, and us being the dividing line between the two. And the dividing line between the spirit man and the flesh man is the intellectual man, or the soul man. So we are to embody that, and I give that as a symbol unto you. In alchemy, the blackbird is symbolic of the Negrito stage, which is a Saturnian process of putrefaction, of going into the darkness, so to speak, and confronting the demons there and allowing the darkness to envelop you, and allowing the darkness to kind of like destroy and corrode your false ego, your false self, until you're stripped bare, until your soul is bared, and then you can be clothed upon with the light, with the truth. Then you can receive it. But until you are unclothed or the soul is laid bare, you aren't fit to begin this great journey, this great trek. Otherwise you'd be too heavy, lest you could get a single wing or a single talon off the ground, you know what I mean? So yeah, there's that. So take that symbol of the blackbird and take it and apply it to yourself, and realize that all of your sometimes human beings feel kind of uncomfortable or clunky in their flesh suit, and they say, oh, woe is me, why is my life like this? What they don't realize is that that's actually the human experience. The human being feels uncomfortable in matter because it's actually a constraint upon the physical vessel. I'll give you another idea. The crucifixion of Christ, or the crucifixion of Jesus, is symbolic, of course, of you yourself as the spirit seed, or a spark of pure life being crystallized on the 4 points of matter, or the 4 molecules of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen. Every single cell of your body is a spark of glowing light in the center, and then those four pillars that actually crucify and keep you bound to a flesh state. And so the resurrection is those 4 pillars being loosed, or the stone being rolled away from the tomb, the spirit rising triumphant over the conditions of material life. That is our goal. That is the destiny towards which we stride. Head held high, prepared for service, because once you free self, then you realize that you as an individual are actually a part of a collective, right? the human heart is one. We're all parts of the human heart. And so as you free self, then you realize that you cannot enjoy peace and prosperity and spiritual enlightenment without also wishing these things for thine brother. Islam. So, New Year, January 4th. We are in 2019. 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 9 is 12. 1 plus 2 is 3. So we're in the year of 3. 3 symbolizing in numerology activity and expression, creativity. So this is going to be a very positive year of unfoldment for all of us. 3 also symbolizes the spirit, the activity of the spirit, the pure prana, the pure pranic force that stimulates all of life into activity, prior to matter. So we're talking like spiritual energy in motion that shapes the coming of the material, or shapes the coming of the 4, the square, the base of the pyramid. So this is a year of tremendous activity. So you can probably already feel changes coming about in all of your circumstances. Things that seemed impossible and hopeless only a few days back are starting to lighten up because a new energy, a new vigor is coming upon you and upon the whole planet. And so we will see very positive and revolutionary changes in our individual circumstances as initiates travel in the path, and also we will see global and international developments as well. So look out for those. And because it is a new year, me personally, I have actually the work of my channel for the last year or so, I've actually made that private, and I've privatized those lessons because I realized that those lessons were, and dear listener, please don't take this the wrong way, those lessons were actually for self. They were for myself. I publicized them for the benefit that it might be to another who's walking a similar path. But there's a line in the Quran of Mecca that says that each is a goal towards which Allah sets him. So strive together as in a race towards all that is good. Wheresoever you are, Allah will bring you together, for Allah hath power over all things. So to each is a goal, right? In every man's spiritual path, though it's similar and though it's archetypally similar, then it's actually individual. So the lessons of one are not good for the all necessarily. It's the principles, it's the science that is the same. But each man must take unto himself that portion of the light or that portion of the science that he needs to improve his circumstance and to further his spiritual journey, and apply that to self. And actually, until that science is applied and put into action and activity in one's own thoughts, emotions, actions, and instilled into his character, then it remains a dead letter on the paper. You know what I mean? It remains just words, somebody speaking to you. Like an old Hermetic saying says that the ancient masters could shout the wisdom of the ages into the ears of a fool for 1,000 years, and the fool would still be wedded to his folly because he hasn't changed. Nothing has quickened inside of him, and until that quickening takes place, then it's really for naught. So what I noticed with my dispensation was that, and actually watching over my channel, was that I was leaving like breadcrumb trails for me to follow and to see where I was at different points in the journey. And I suggest that everyone, if they haven't already, begin to keep either a written journal or begin to make videos and recordings, and just because your thoughts are fleeting. I mean, you will hardly remember 10 thoughts that you had yesterday, and hard to remember 10 thoughts that you had a year ago, So it's important to keep a record of sorts. And so this channel has actually been a record of sorts for self. And going forward, I do plan to continue releasing videos for much the same purpose, as a personal, chronological record of experience and of ideas thunk and convictions had. And I will try to make it going forward more universal so that it can apply to all in whatever circumstance they have. But you will notice it is actually quite difficult in this day and age to provide precepts to people, because truth is one. Like, the absolute truth of the universe is the 12 signs of the zodiac and the 9 planets that govern our universe. But how many will accept those things on face value, right? religions are actually political institutions based on divine immutable science that are instituted by wise men to get a large group of people organized around right and exact principles. And so that's why when we're looking at religions and we see the beauty and the light in them, what we're seeing is the pure science of truth that doesn't grow old or pass away. It has been organized by wise men, a council of wise men, to govern lesser evolved beings, ideally to raise them up into godhood as well, so that they can perceive the pure light of truth for themselves and thus govern their own affairs as I, self, law, and master. But because human beings and human souls actually evolve in waves, taking millions and millions of years, etc., then you will have those who are further advanced, who have lifted themselves out of the herd, and they have thus made themselves fit to govern the masses. Like the universe is actually kind of like a spiritual hierarchy, where you have minerals, you have plants, you have animals or beasts, you have men, then you have angels, cherubim, seraphim, and the higher beings without names, etc. And they're all bound together by love and bound together by cause and effect relationships, bound together in the labor of involution and evolution. And that is actually the symphony of the universe. If you look at the word universe, uni is one, verse is like it's really like one song. The universe is one song, and remembering the Hermetic law of vibration, that everything in creation vibrates, right? And the law of cause and effect, that vibration causes a ripple effect throughout the whole cosmos. Or as the Circle 7 says, if you touch a fiber of a living thing, you send a thrill from the center to the outer bounds of life. Everything has an effect. So of course, me releasing these tapes and them being heard by a small minority in the world, number-wise, of course that has an effect, and that'll ripple through their lives, etc., perhaps. But I felt that because I am an evolving being and because my listeners are also evolving beings, then it behooves me to bring the most up-to-date understanding that I have. And perhaps I will, at a later date, release certain specific tapes that deal with certain topics so they need not be repeated. But what I really wish is for all to progress in the most harmonious manner, for everybody to unfold into their higher self, for everybody to become as God, knowing good and evil so that they can choose good over evil. It's just polarity, right? Islam family. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I will be releasing tapes up and coming, but until then, keep shining. Keep shining, Moors. And I want to give you guys some tapes, or I want to give you guys some book references as well, because nobody just wakes up. If somebody has knowledge or information, that information was received from a source, most likely from a master teacher or from a book written by a master teacher or somebody who was in tune and harmony with the higher ethers, like that. Or maybe it was given as a genetic inheritance, but still that was received from another source. And when you read a book and you take that information in and then you build it up in yourself, because really when you read a book, you're and if you hear me cut off, that's because my thoughts are running faster than my ability to process them. But when you're reading a book, you remember the author had an understanding in his head, right? In the brain cells, he had an understanding. He was able to take that understanding and code it with whatever language he's familiar with, the English language, and code that language into the writing, and to make it clear so that others can understand without having that information in their brain cells. But it requires a process it requires effort on the part of the reader or the listener to reconstruct that understanding into their own brain cells and make it their own, right? So imagine that process happening 10, 20, 10,000 times. Then it starts to get diluted, and to get closer to the truth, it makes sense to be a scholar and to be able to read for yourself, right? C.M. Bay stated, Religion is for ignorant people who cannot read. I'm an informer. The truth will enable you to inform yourself. So with that in mind, I will give probably 10 good books that I recommend that everyone who is interested in becoming greater than they are now to read, process, and fully understand. You know what I mean? Number one is The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ. If you haven't gotten that book, you haven't read it, get that book and read it. And don't read it just once, read it 2, 3, 5, 10 times, because only thus will the full meaning be disclosed unto you. The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ is a narrative of the life and ministry of Jesus the Christ, Yeshua ben Yosef, Isa ibn Mary, right, Emmanuel, and it's really telling, but it's coded, right? Just like the Bible is coded at 1 to 7 levels, this Bible book is also coded at 1 to 7 levels. What it is it's a purer, clearer message of his life, containing the missing 18 years in full, and containing many of the higher lessons of Yeshua. And it wouldn't be fitting for me to disclose from my understanding what I see in the book, because that would of course rob you of the joy of discovering it yourself. And also, the highest truths are incommunicable. Like students, they don't like to admit this, but it's true. The highest truths are incommunicable. When you're reading something, you get that aha moment, and then you immediately want to go out and tell somebody. What happens when you go out and tell somebody? They don't really get it, do they? No, because you built that understanding into yourself. That understanding was revealed unto you. And those blessed ones who are able to get truth and to reveal it on a large scale such that it reaches the four corners of the earth, they're blessed and highly favored, and they're remembered as like prophets and seers and stuff. You know what I mean? So get Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ. Another book, The Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. Not to be confused with the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, which is an alchemical verse of about 13 bars that tells the full mystery if you read deeply. But the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean is actually purportedly an older volume that tells about the initiation and the raising up of Thoth, the God-man of Egypt, the great teacher and initiator of the human race, the custodian of the mysteries, and the speaker for the gods. It tells his lessons, and he gives lessons on every part of cosmology and esotericism you could possibly want. And again, that book must be read 10, 100 times to fully get the meaning of that particular text. Another good book, The Master Key System. The Master Key System by Charles Haanel. That is a book that every Moor needs to read. It's actually a course, 24 to 28 week course, initiating you into the science of the human mind, how to use your mind, how to concentrate, and how to bring things from the unseen into the seen world through concentration, imaging, visualization, etc. It tells you all about the mechanism of your thought process. It tells you about the cerebral spinal system and the conscious mind, the sympathetic nerve system, the solar plexus, and the subconscious mind. It tells you about the superconscious mind. It tells you about the vagus nerve that connects the two. It tells you about the science of breathing, the science of meditation. It goes in and in and in, and gradually, without code or spookism, gives you the tools, the practical keys to bringing this information into light. And without that master key, everything kind of falls apart. You know what I mean? Another book, and I've spoken about this one so many times almost as to be redundant, but the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, the Circle 7. That is a book that every so-called black person in America and around the world needs to have in his possession, period. we have been subject to so much mind control and so many people trying to get in our pockets with the religion and with the mysticism and spookism and stuff. Noble Drew Ali brought the pure gospel of truth, the gospel of Jesus, the gospel of Allah, the gospel of all the scriptures in one short 60-page volume, and told you all the lessons you need to live a full and prosperous life, to organize your family unit, and to achieve prosperity. He also gives you the history of your nation that the European thought that you would never know. So you need to get that book and honor your prophet like that. Another two very invaluable books, Clock of Destiny Volume 1 and Clock of Destiny Volume 2. These are books that will not be recommended to you by anybody because they have more truth in them than most any other book of that size. Valuable stones come in small packages. There's not enough money in the world to pay for necessary knowledge, right? Seek light, shun ignorance. Those books will tell you about your nation and will redeem you from being a Negro slave in the mind, right? In the mind. Penned by C.M. Bay. Enough said. I'll let you discover it for yourself. Another book, The God-Man, The Word Made Flesh, by George Carey, I want to say. George Carey, I believe. But The God-Man, The Word Made Flesh. That book demystifies the Bible and tells you about the physiological nature of Jesus Christ. The physiological nature of Jesus Christ. Many people don't know that the ancient masters of Egypt and later Greece, and those who actually, the ancient masters of Egypt actually were the ones who were instrumental in formulating Gnosticism, or what they call Orthodox Christianity, through the first 3 centuries of the Common Era. They taught that Jesus was not a man, but he was actually a spiritual or a psychophysical seed that is born in the brain, that goes down to the solar plexus, and that has to be brought back up the spine through the chrism or the cerebral spinal fluid back into the brain to illuminate your pineal gland. And that process of its birth and descent down your spine into the manger or into the solar plexus happens actually every 30 days or every moon cycle. And that you have to purify yourself, your thoughts, your words and deeds, and live a Christ-like life, quote unquote, in order to raise that seed back up before it gets devoured by the dragons and the sharks that live in your lower chakra around your sexual organs. And that you have to purify your sexual conduct in order to get enlightened, right? That's a very important book. It's a very important book. That book should be read in conjunction with the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ. Because like I say, often the Bible, the scriptures can be read on multiple levels. But the most important level is 1, astrological, and 2, physiological or biological, dealing with your physical body, and the Christ seed or the Jesus seed or the fish that is born in the brain by the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, descending down your spine into the manger, into your solar plexus, right? And also, if you want a quick understanding of this gnosis, go to YouTube, which you're on now, presumably, and look up Sacred Secretion. Sacred Secretion. And you'll get a better understanding of this as well. Another very important book, The Lost Word of Freemasonry by Hilton Otima. The Lost Word of Freemasonry by Hilton Otima. And this is not only for Masons, this is for all those who are interested in the philosophy of the ancient Magi. Freemasonry did not pop up out of nowhere. Freemasonry is the inheritor of a very ancient science, and it's actually one of the few orders on the planet Earth who still have the full mysteries of what our ancient ancestors were dealing with, right? They preserved it from destruction by the Catholic Church, which you'll understand when you read Clock of Destiny, of course. So please look into that, and also look into all the works of Professor Hilton Otima, like the mysteries of the mysterious Sphinx, the ancient sun god, Awaken the World Within. He has so many great titles. The Great Law, the Soul's Secret, The Breath of Life and the Fire Divine. Hilton Otima is somebody, and I want you guys to understand too that this tape is me putting you on the game. This tape is me giving you what I've been using to understand and unfold my consciousness, and actually make these tapes for the last year and a half. You know what I mean? What's another really good book that everybody should have in their possession? The Holy Kabbalah. The Holy Kabbalah by Dion Fortune. The Holy Kabbalah by Dion Fortune. And excuse me, I might have the title wrong, but that book is probably one of the best books on the Kabbalah you will ever come across. And I want it to be known too that the Kabbalah is not Jewish mysticism. It's not Khazarian pale-skinned people mysticism. It's actually ancient Canaanite, Moabite mysticism. The philosophy of numbers and astrology. And cosmology, that's ancient Egyptian type stuff, you know what I mean? And the Kabbalah is one of those secret sciences that needs to be given back to the people so that they can free themselves from a religious dogmatism and mysticism and fanaticism and all these terrible things that plague this age. That are actually going to be shoveled out by Saturn and Uranus in this next cycle. So you have to get back in line with nature, back in line with pure truth if you want to survive this next cycle, you know what I mean? So the Holy Kabbalah, books on the Kabbalah, and very important. And I think that'll be all the books that I recommend at this particular point. Of course, there are many, many more, and I will be referencing more literature going forward, but take the ones I've given you, apply them to yourself. Peace and light, and also peace. Proper education always corrects errors, right? Study, and when you have studied well and would ask me what to study next, I would tell you, study yourselves, your higher self and your lower self. Higher self is human spirit clothed in soul, made in the form of Allah. Lower self, the carnal self, the body of desires, is a reflection of higher self, distorted by the murky ethers of the flesh. The lower self is an illusion and will pass away. The higher self is Allah in man and will not pass away. So when you're dealing with the devil, the only devil that need be defeated is the one within. Once you defeat the devil within, you'll have the strength to be righteous in all circumstances and to actually conquer the real devil of this world, which is really just a collective thought form or a collective macrocosmic lower self that is created by all the people on earth who are thinking wrong and inexact thoughts, you know? The Lust, the Great Red Dragon. That's another book by Hilton Otima, by the way. The Great Red Dragon must be read. But all the carnal lust and all the bestial energy of these human beings on the earth actually creates like an oversoul that can incarnate in any human being's body. So we are the ones who are destroying nature and destroying the natural cycle of life by our thoughts, because thought is an energy more subtle and more powerful than electricity. The sun, the universe, was created by the power of thought, and you yourself are a thought-emitting being who can direct the full force of Allah depending on how powerful a thought you can generate in your own mind. So, master the mind. The mind is all. The universe is mental. Hibbu, Haq, Salam, Hurriyatun wa Adl. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I, self, law, am master. Elias Bey, your host. Islam.